Chris from Channel X here, back for a catch-up with Murray Lambell, General Manager of eBay UK. Welcome back, Murray.
Chris, good to see you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good.
So we haven't spoken really since the autumn at Channel X World, and hopefully see you again this year. But a lot's happened since then. The war in Ukraine is still going. The cost of living crisis that you were talking about has got worse. Energy prices are still pretty steep. Latest news, Northern Ireland hopefully going to make it easier for trade within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So there's an awful lot going on, but I wanted to go back to something a bit more topical just to start with, which is Love Island, which is coming towards an end. But you've been a partner with Love Island for the second time this year. How's it gone?
Yeah. We're really pleased to have taken part in the partnership for the second time, as you mentioned, with Love Island, because what it does is it drives a new discussion with consumers, and consumers engage and they get excited, and then consumers want to find out more. And then more consumers means that they come and visit your site, find out what's going on. So we've been thrilled with the engagement that we've had from buyers who are curious and then visit eBay more. And then we're also thrilled with the discussion that's driven particularly in the fashion industry and around how we drive more circularity. And having those two things work together in one partnership is kind of beautiful, actually. And that's the loveliness of a marketplace to help that flywheel work. And we've seen it work brilliantly well, and as well this time as it did the first time around last summer.
Yeah, and I think a bit of celeb always attracts people. And when you can buy the clothes that have been on Love Island on eBay, or search for very similar items. But that brings us into the whole circularity and sustainability of the fashion industry. Can you tell us a bit about what the take-up of pre-loved fashion has been on eBay, and how Love Island has driven that attention?
So, pre-loved fashion is a very big part of our business overall, whether that's sold by consumers or whether it's businesses that have access to that type of inventory and stock. What's interesting for us is it's driving more consideration, particularly from businesses, about how they think about their new stock and distressed stock and used stock, and how they make those three different stock pools work together. And then in addition, a lot of the big brands that have access to used or distressed stock in some way are now much more thoughtful about the channels through which they sell that, and particularly the small businesses that they use to sell that inventory on eBay. And all of that is helping to up the standards and up the experience and the quality with which buyers are able to find their inventory. So that drives overall positive demand on us year on year on 2 year pre-pandemic, however you want to define that. But interestingly, it's really shifting the way that supply is being made available and coming online, and then coming onto a marketplace model, which is helpful for all of your subscribers and all of the sellers that are using the eBay platform.
Yeah, so it's driving traffic to eBay, but it's not just pre-loved fashion, isn't it? You've also got the play in the refurbished tech market, and the whole kind of sustainable play on eBay, which eBay, to be honest, as a marketplace, is quite uniquely positioned to play in that field, because you've got that mix of new, pre-loved, used stock. What's happening in the tech world on the refurbished side? So
I'll answer that question in a second, but I just want to comment on one thing that you've said. The drive-through for sustainability, it has lots of different facets to it. There's what consumers are interested in and engaged in, and there's been a massive shift. It was happening pre-pandemic. It's much more acute since the end of the pandemic, with consumers being more thoughtful about buying in sustainable ways. Now, that doesn't mean all of their basket is sustainable, but it means that some of their basket is sustainable, and then it drives just a broader consideration. There's also a set of changes that are coming for businesses to think about how their operations are sustainable and what they're doing. And those things are different things, but they all need to be tackled at the same time. So we've released some content, for example, on our eBay Academy to help businesses think about what's their path to net zero, what's their path to sustainability. We've partnered with Small Business Britain to help businesses think about this. So our interest in sustainability is as much about what's the product you sell as it is about what's the experience of the businesses that are behind the product that you're buying. And clearly, whether you're buying a new product, a used product, or a refurbished product, they work together. So I just think it's worth setting in context our focus on sustainability and circularity outside of just the products that we sell. Now, on refurbished specifically, we will be in the UK by far the biggest provider in terms of our sustainable range of products, refurbished range of products, because we're across so many different categories.
Yeah. So everything from computers to vacuum cleaners.
Yeah, and it's not just about mobile phones. It's about so many other categories that you can buy in. And then what's interesting for me is how we continue to make that part of the shopping journey and shopping experience, so that consumers can say, well, sometimes I want to buy new, sometimes I want to buy another type of item. Help me make the trade-offs and decisions much more easily. And we found every segment that we've moved into with the refurbished has gone brilliantly well. And again, it's unlocking the conversation with brands and product owners to be more thoughtful about their products and where they're reselling them. And often small businesses have a big role to play in that.
And obviously eBay are uniquely placed with things like your authentication program, for giving consumers the confidence to make that purchase. And obviously there's handbags, there's sneakers, it's expanding rapidly. And that leads me into the next question I had for you, which is, can you tell us how what eBay term as focus categories are growing, and what you're doing in that area, and more importantly, how it's bringing consumers to the site, which then go on to shop in other categories?
Yeah, so we cover such a broad range of categories, and our job is to provide a very good experience for all customers that shop on our platform. Obviously, always aspiring to be excellent, we can always do better. And then there are certain areas that we've doubled down or focused on where we believe that the experience in that particular vertical is specific and needs to be in addition to that core experience that we're building. And so what you can expect to see is more work and more expansion in the focus area. So for example, to give people confidence to buy some higher price points items in some of the categories you mentioned, we authenticate the product. What that does is that customers come in and buy that authenticated product, and then they buy in a much broader range of categories, either directly related or often in a broader set of adjacencies. So people that shop on eBay UK in vehicle parts and accessories are very likely to go on and buy in a whole load of adjacent categories, for example, in the home and garden area, or in the tech area in particular. Those two will be the closest adjacencies. And we're seeing that as buyers come back to eBay and are really bought into the confidence that the new experience is giving them, they're buying in a much broader range of adjacencies. And that's really the trick that we're trying to get right. So how do we lift the whole of the site in terms of its velocity overall by making sure that we have some standout experiences where we think it matters most to the buyer, and also helping with tooling with the seller that sits behind it as well.
And obviously those categories, the focus categories are going to be of interest to people that have regularly shopped on eBay. But what are they doing to bring new buyers to the site? Are you seeing a lot of traction that if you focus on, you mentioned motor parts and accessories, since you started focusing on that category, are you seeing new buyers to eBay?
Yeah, there are always new buyers that are coming in all the time, for sure. And the new experiences that we're launching drive a larger number of new buyers into those areas, and so then those customers go on to buy in adjacencies. And look, we all know that shopping online is a very good experience in the UK in general, because we have the most advanced online retailing economy, and I've said that several times in different forums that I've been in with you. In that context, how do we keep upping the standard and make it better and better? And so this isn't a once and done game. We need to keep investing in making sure that the experiences we deliver overall, and in particular in a growing number of vertical areas, continues to up the level and standard.
And talking of the level of standard, we've seen some pretty acute problems in the run-up to Christmas with logistics, and Royal Mail in particular. I'm going to name and shame, unfortunately, but they also had a knock-on effect to other carriers who suddenly had way more volume than they expected. What are your thoughts on logistics, and how can eBay help retailers deliver that service and indeed up the service that they're giving to consumers in the face of the challenges that we've had over the last few months?
So the first thing to comment on, I was exceptionally frustrated and disappointed for all of our sellers that the Royal Mail and the unions were not able to reach an agreement that led to such acute disruption at a peak time of year. And I spoke about that very publicly, and we spoke about it in many public forums, and we engaged at the most senior levels within the Royal Mail to express our dissatisfaction. And I continue to express our requirements that a resolution is reached as quickly as possible. As we speak today, that is still not done, and that threat is overhanging. My view is, how do we help all of the carriers in the UK to provide great services and solutions to the sellers that need them? And so we're very thoughtful, and you should expect to see improvements on our side around how we make availability and access to our sellers, all of our sellers, for different types of shipping solutions more readily and more easily, so they're not beholden to a limited number of solutions. And equally, how do we use the data and information we've got back so that all the carriers continue to lift their quality and service standards? So I think that this area is so core to the success of online retailing in the UK, and we need to see a step change in the number of improvements that we get from carriers.
So watch this space, improvements for carriers and eBay integrations to make it happen. And that kind of brings me on to my final question, which is on the wider economy. We're still seeing the cost of living crisis. Energy prices are about to go up as the price cap changes, unless there's a last minute reprieve in the budget. But regardless, just your local food shop each week is significantly, like 20-25% higher than previously. How do you see this impacting consumer spend as we go through the year, and especially as we come into Q4? And what can businesses do to combat the kind of reduced spend people have got, but keep their volumes of sales?
Yeah. I mean, that is the conundrum, and I wish I had the perfect answer for that.
I won't hold you to it, but your predictions for the year ahead.
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd say is, if we look at Q4, if I look at the trends across the second half of last year, and in particular in Q4, what we found is consumers were going more into store, and we saw a much bigger shift back to store behaviour, and I'm expecting that balance to redress a little bit. We're still bigger as a percentage of total retail online than we were pre-pandemic, and I expect that to be sustained. It certainly isn't as buoyant, as large as we all thought it was going to be. We don't need to read too far into the papers to know that that's the case. Yeah. What I'd say is, coming into this year, is that as I exited December and came into early January, the outlook was much more difficult and sinister than I feel that looks to be the case now, some 6 to 8 weeks later. And we've all seen that reported more broadly. What I see in sales numbers is a more buoyant business environment than I was certainly anticipating, which is really good news. And I see that across categories. And I think confidence that consumers have in seeing agreement and ease of how Northern Ireland businesses can trade creates an overall more buoyant atmosphere. I think consumers hearing about lower inflation prospects by the end of the year, which has been somewhat broadly reported in the last week, again give consumers more confidence. So I'd say consumer confidence is better than it was, more fragile than I would like it to be. The thing that is crystal clear is that I believe that I'm getting value remains dominant for many of our customers, but at the same time, I still find a lot of buoyancy in very high price point categories where people are willing to splurge and splash out and spoil themselves. And those analogies of how people will spend and treat themselves at moments of economic distress continues to hold true, and I see that in spades on the eBay platform.
Yeah, and I think it's very true and been very obvious throughout the pandemic that while some are very, very economically challenged, there are others with higher income levels that haven't been hit nearly as hard and do have available money to spend. And that's only got to be good for retailers, especially those with higher end luxury goods. And just to finish off on the higher end luxury, which brings us back to the eBay authentication, what are your thoughts there? Is that trend going to continue with strong spend, or do you see that tightening in the future?
So, as I said, I think that many consumers, regardless of whether or not you've got a lot of disposable income or limited disposable income, everyone wants to treat themselves and feel good in a transaction. Authentication is one way that you might do that. Main thing for me is, how do we help customers continue to buy with confidence across a much broader range of products? So whether that's I'm buying a refurbished item and I've got confidence that the seller has refurbished that to a great quality and the guarantees sit behind it, or that item has been touched and checked because it needed to be because of the value behind it, then that's what we'll do. And I think you should expect to see just more innovation, which helps give customers more confidence over and above the base experience that we have today, which clearly is exceptional, but there's more to do to give confidence in certain areas.
So confidence, quality, and feeling that you're getting a good deal, and also look out for service level improvements, and especially conversations with carriers. And hopefully, Murray, thank you for today, and hopefully we can catch up again in the autumn before Q4 and see how the year is panning out.
Yeah, look forward to it. Take care.
Thank you
Nice
so
to
much,
see you.
Murray.